If you're here, then the odds are that you are a recruiter. And if you are, you're probably doing decently well, but you know that there's a limit to how much you can realistically make. You're probably tired of the KPIs, the office politics, the favoritism to higher performers, and ultimately you know that you could be making more on your own. I get it because I was in your shoes once. Then I built my own recruitment business from the ground up, and I still run it today, regularly making 6 figures a month. That said, I've helped others start a brand new recruitment business with no experience and go from 0 to 30K in their first 90 days. And I've helped many others who already started their recruitment journeys and either were struggling or they were stuck at that 5-10K kind of buffer and were able to 4 or 5x their income. In this video, I'm just going to give you the exact blueprint and step-by-step playbook that I would use if I had to start my entire recruitment business all over again and build it from 0 right the way up to 100K a month. And by the end of this video, you'll have the complete roadmap to leave your job, build your own agency, and even scale it to a point where it can run without you being involved in day-to-day. So for you to understand my entire journey, I want to paint the picture for what it was like when I was working in my full-time role. Yes, I worked in a corporate environment, in a recruitment agency. But there always comes a moment in time, and this is excluding the first maybe 6 to 12 months when you're usually overhyped on the opportunity of working in recruitment because you see the potential that you can make. And it is a good opportunity to work in recruitment. I'm not denying that. But there's a moment in time where you feel a little bit undervalued, especially if your total income is like less than 20, even 25%, and then you've got no real support whatsoever. Then ultimately you come to realize that actually I'm making all this money, I'm building somebody else's empire. That's okay if you're getting rewarded for it, but a lot of the time you're not getting rewarded for it. You're just constantly in that battle of hitting more KPIs, or your target just gets moved a little bit more to get the next pay rise, the next promotion, which you end up realizing is an endless game that you can't win. And then one day you might realize that actually I need to do something about this, but it hits you that actually I've got some responsibilities, I've got bills to pay. And it's not that I lacked confidence in terms of my recruitment ability. It was just that the salary gives like a little bit of a peace of mind knowing that next month I'm not starting from 0. Just going back for a moment, like what happens in terms of the growth of the job that you're in is you end up hitting some KPIs, then you end up hitting your targets, and then if you meet them, then you'll get a 2 or a 5K pay rise. Sounds amazing, and it is great. I went through a period where I got a pay rise and a promotion every year, but then it gets to a point where you come to realize that, hey, the only thing that's happening is that the goalpost is moving a little bit, and then my salary goes up a little bit, and my goalpost is moving a little bit, and then the salary goes up a little bit. And it's also an opportunity to get like almost beaten down at the same time, because if you hit your KPIs and you don't hit your revenue targets, then you're getting in trouble for not hitting your revenue targets. And if you hit your revenue targets but you don't hit your KPIs, then you get in trouble for hitting your KPIs. It's like this battle that just keeps playing on in recruitment, especially if you're in an employed position. And that KPI revenue metrics target kind of like translates into so many other corporate roles. So wherever you come from in terms of your background experience, like you'll find it relatable. The only thing that rubs salt into the wound is when you're aspiring to be like one of the higher performers, then you see your manager treating that employee completely differently compared to how they treat you, knowing that that person probably started where you are as well. And then there's some of the more deeper cuts that they can possibly make. Because I can still remember when my grandma passed away, there were no condolences. It was just, are you going to be back into the office on Friday? And that was one moment that really hit hard. And then it got worse a little bit later because me being Muslim, I don't drink. And there was a day when the entire team, even the people who didn't perform as well as I did, they all got taken out on a day out, and there was a lot of gambling and alcohol involved, which is something that I stay away from. And I remember having my annual review. And this is me being probably like one of the only people that hit their financial and KPI target every single month consistently for a whole year, leading into a pay rise as well. And I had my annual review and I was expecting to have praises, but I didn't. I just got in trouble for not performing higher than what I'm capable of. It was a really harsh meeting, although it was constructive. But there was a moment in time where I said at the end of the meeting, hey, look, I know you guys took the entire team out and I looked after everything in the office. What are you going to do for me? And this is where my manager looked at me and he said, you get all. And that was it. I left to go and type my resignation. My line manager had a few conversations with me, kind of bought a little bit of time, but the decision was made. I was leaving. That's when I left to find a slightly better opportunity. Now, for me, it was a very emotional trigger that led to a logical decision. And I'm hoping that it doesn't get that bad for you. I need to take full control of my responsibility and my finances, because at the moment it is in the care and in the hands of somebody who doesn't value me, doesn't care for me, and doesn't appreciate the work that I do. So I did. And the bottom line is that that's a switch that you have to make as well. Meaning that if you want to take the full control and responsibility of your own finances and whether you need permission or not to take a day off. So now that you've heard that, either you're going to start thinking like a business owner, or you're in the process. And because maybe the mental shift hasn't quite taken place just yet, you're going to be leaving on a low note rather than a high note as a high performing employee. Or because you have to ask literally one question to yourself: what is the most valuable skill that you bring to the person that you work for at the moment, the business that you work? What is the most valuable skill that you have? And the reason why I emphasize that point is because the skills that you bring to your employer that make you a good recruiter are not the same skills that make you a good business owner or a business leader or a team leader or a manager, or heck, in some cases, somebody who's responsible with their finances. Because as a recruiter, you get paid to provide recruiting services. But as a business owner, you get paid to build the machine that delivers recruitment services. And this is actually a trap that a lot of solo independent recruiters fall into, is because they're trying to do everything themselves. They get so bogged down and drilled down in staying on top of like the new tool. Like, should I take out LinkedIn Recruiter? Should I not? Should I try this automation tool, this AI tool? And they just get lost in this endless loop, which prevents them from growing. And next thing you know, they're adding on another service, and then they're offering something else for somebody else, and then they're like side hustle selling vapes as well at the same time. And all it means is that what used to be a full-time job, you left it to start your own business, now with a greater level of responsibility to end up in a full-time job inside your business. And then if you are a solo operator, then what you find is that you're measuring yourself based on your previous targets. You come to realize actually you can't hit them. Maybe one day you push yourself, and over the course of a 12-month cycle, you achieve the same targets and billings as what you did in your previous company, but you feel content that you don't have the manager and all the stress and the KPIs and all of that stuff. And then year on year, your billings tend to increase 5, even 10%, which feels like a good achievement. But I'm just going to make a point here. If inflation is higher than 10%, then the only thing that your billings have done is they've followed wage inflation. So if your business is growing at 5 to 10%, it's actually not growing because your expenses are going up faster than 5 to 10%. And that's personal and business. The reason why solo operators get stuck at that place is because of delegation. And because of delegation, this is where early founders just get stuck and they just struggle. Only because of one thing, and that is that they struggle to let go and they don't like giving up control. And guess what? Giving up control is known as delegating. And there was a moment in time where I struggled with that too, because I didn't believe that there was anybody else out there that could do the job that I was doing as well as I could do it. I had several years experience behind me. I knew the niche. I knew the candidates. They knew me personally. How the heck is anybody else going to send messages, emails, and make phone calls as well as me, considering the context that I have for years of experience? And here's the thing, when you're in that situation where you're doing well enough to justify making a hire, but you end up making a hire for a recruiter without having any other systems and operations in place, what happens is you become the worst possible manager to work for. You literally hired somebody with the belief that nobody else can do anything better than me. So then you end up micromanaging them. And then you're going into like, show me that email, show me that phone call. How many calls have you done? How many messages have you sent? What have you said to this person? And you go into so much excruciating level of detail that the employee is probably going to leave because they feel like this guy's crazy. So just to help you break out of what is an endless loop, I want you to just write this down. If you're in that situation, just write down one small isolated task. Let's just take CV formatting, for example, or even invoicing. And you take that one simple isolated task. Even if it went terribly wrong, your business is not going to close down, meaning it's a low risk task. How you perform that task, I want you to record your screen and build a set of instructions. Try and make them short. Don't make like a 45-minute Netflix documentary, just really short, 5 to 10 minute long videos, breaking down step by step what you want happening. Like, this is literally you reformatting a Word document and then asking for it to be sent back. Write those instructions down and then sit down with a family member and get them to follow the instructions. And you have to sit there and watch what they do quietly. Do not say a word, because that gives you instant feedback. It tells you how clear your instructions are, because if they make a mistake, it's on you. And it also psychologically breaks the barrier that somebody else is there who can do exactly what you do. Maybe they take 5 to 10 minutes more, but that 5 or 10 minutes more removes cognitive load for you, frees up your time a little bit, and it allows your business to grow. Because now those 5, 10, 15-minute slots, which you might have been doing 5 or 6 times a day, they become free. Somebody else takes care of it. It frees up your time to talk to more clients and candidates, if that's the next highest leverage item that you need to be working on. And the next thing is like a more fear-based item. And this just means that you don't have full visibility over your business, meaning that a lot of recruiters run their businesses based on guesswork and a little bit of gut feeling. And this is where KPIs really come in, and it makes you understand why older managers and old school managers who hold you to KPIs actually had them in place in the first place. And that's because you have to understand unit economics and play that against the demand. Meaning you have to ask your question, what's the biggest demand for a candidate in a given niche, and what's the biggest demand from the client? So now in both cases, how do you generate a client and a candidate? What does it take? How many phone calls? How many emails? How many messages? LinkedIn, YouTube? What does it take to generate a client? And then you can break it down even further. How many follow-ups are required? How many total conversations are required? What's the sequence and the cadence of work that you have to carry out before they actually have a conversation with you? And how consistently do you take daily action to make sure that that happens? Because that data, as long as you have all the processes documented, proves that if you do something enough times, you will see this result. And that's exactly how KPIs are measured. When somebody asks me like, what KPIs should I hold myself to? Well, we need to reverse engineer it. At the beginning, you just got to max out, go as many as you possibly can. How many calls, emails, messages can you possibly take? And then once you make your first placement, now you can reverse engineer it, because now you know this is the input that I need to put in to get this output. But when you're working for somebody else and they don't know how good you are, they extend the KPIs to an unreasonable level in some cases just to make sure that you get the output, because they know if you do this amount of input, you're going to get this in terms of an output. Let's just talk about what you need to do in the next 90 days. Here's the first step. You have to niche down. I can't stress how important this actually is, and understand the person that you're targeting and what their pains and problems actually are. As much as gimmicky as that sounds, because you might have heard about niching down and using a similar kind of terminology, it makes sense when you really, really break it down. All it means is that the pain somebody feels is different compared to the way that they operate. So if somebody has 10 grand in their bank account, and that's all the money that they have, then investing in, let's just say, a coaching program that is charged at 15K just sounds wildly absurd. No different to your clients. If all they've got in their bank is 10, 15 or 20K, then paying you a 20K recruitment fee is just insane. And that's the problem with small businesses. Then you go to a whole new level and you go to another tier of clients where they actually have money. 6 figures, multiple 6 figures in their bank account, sitting there waiting to be used. They have money to pay for your services. And now the issue is, how big is the problem? Meaning, if you take a restaurant and their head chef has now left, major problem. But if it's one of the waiters, not so much a problem. Still need more waiters, but it's not as urgent as that problem. Two completely different scenarios, same business, same person, same level of spending power. And the same rule applies when you go up to a higher level. If you have a business with hundreds in terms of hiring needs of people, then guess what? They're going to try and build their own internal recruitment function. Nature of recruitment, you would do too if this was your own business. If you're spending more than 6 figures a year on anything, then it makes sense to consider bringing it in-house. So what I've just described there is the different types and shapes of organizations, and the pain that they feel, how urgent it is, how much they're prepared to pay for it varies. From my experience, a good niche is usually in the mid-range to start off with. If you can capture businesses who are just starting, so it's a solo founder and they've just started and they come from experience of a larger organization, guess what? They're very likely to grow quickly. So don't ignore the solo companies or the smaller independent firms. Just know that a 5-person team is going to want to become a 10-person team, and a 10-person team wants to become a 20-person team, and that number keeps going at as many zeros as you want at the end of it. What I've just described there is organizational structure. Now we just got to look at higher levels, meaning when you're really asking the question of what niche should you go for, let's just talk at a really high level. Is there ever going to be a moment in time where people don't need hospitals? Probably not. Is there ever going to be a moment in time where people don't need internet infrastructure? I don't believe the internet is ever going to go away. Is there ever going to be a moment in time where people don't need banks? I'm sure the crypto funds are going to pipe up, but I don't believe there's going to be a moment in time where banks completely disappear. All of these are forever in demand and growing, especially as the global population increases. They're just in demand and they will continue to grow. And this is why I choose to pick a niche which I look for stability in. I don't necessarily pick the niche that has the highest flair and has the biggest upward trend. But what happens after 5 or 6 years when there's a new technology which is emerging? This one crashes, now you've got to upskill into the new one. So me personally, I prefer to go for niches where there's a consistent, stable, upward trending demand. If you've got a niche where the organizational structure is somewhere between 10 and 50 employees and they're growing, and they're in a niche where the demand is consistently on the rise, I believe you have yourself a good niche. And if you want to add on one more thing, just in case you're in that position where you're trying to decide what niche to go for, try and lean into something that you actually enjoy, something that you like, and don't shy away from complexity. Because sometimes a really complex niche, which is really, really hard to understand, becomes your competitive edge. even in my niche, if anybody were to enter into the niche that we recruit in, it's going to take them 6 to 12 months just to understand what the hell we recruit. Because one of the job titles that we recruit are mechanical engineers, but you get mechanical heating ventilation engineers. And even in that bracket, you get designers, consultants, and contractors. Then you get mechanical automation engineers, mechanical aviation engineers. You search mechanical engineer, you're getting a wild amount of results. And because of that, anybody who goes into our niche, which is a very small niche, and I'm going to say that there's less than 1,000 perfect fit companies that we can possibly work with in the whole of the UK. It just means that if you send emails which are wrong or inappropriate and just don't match up, you're going to burn some bridges pretty quickly. I've seen people come into my niche and then leave. I'm not saying it was because of that, but I also believe that the complexity of the problem creates a higher barrier for entry. Don't shy away from complex niches. When it comes to mapping out your entire market, for the majority of decision makers that you're going to contact within your businesses, 90% of them are on LinkedIn. You can use LinkedIn Recruiter, Sales Navigator, put in the job titles, the location, the type and size of companies that you're recruiting for, and the exact same rule applies for your candidates. Like if they don't exist on LinkedIn, there's a few other data sourcing tools where you can get a list of candidates from. You literally don't even need job boards anymore. And these are job boards that once upon a time we used to pay for until one day you cancel and then you start getting marketing messages like, oh, we're back down to 100 or 200 again. If there's something that I see which is in downward decline, it is 100% job boards. The next step is to take a manual approach. Meaning, if you're not familiar with automation tools and so on, there's no point overcomplicating it. You can learn how to do it and it will shortcut the journey, but ultimately you're overcomplicating the scenario and you have a risk of potentially getting it wrong if you lean into automation too early. Because one thing you need to do first is take manual approaches to your outreach. And your goal is simple. Get your first 2 client meetings and your first 2 candidate meetings. That should be your primary target and your primary goal. And when you do take an approach of manual high-touch outreach, meaning that you literally have telephone conversations or even in-person meetings with clients and candidates, this is where you gain the really in-depth knowledge of your niche, because that's your real specialism, which is becoming an expert in your specific niche. And I'll give you a little pro tip here. You're more likely to get more responses from candidates than you are from clients, i.e. hiring managers. It's the natural name of the game. So now when you speak to the individual candidates, get as much information as you possibly can, even if that means take them out for a coffee, for lunch, and say, hey, can you give me some time? I just want to learn more about what you do day to day. And the more you speak to them, the deeper understanding you're going to have about what they're doing, what the problems are, what they like about their jobs, what they don't like about their jobs, what are the common frustrations, who are the companies that are hiring, that's a lead, who are the companies that are firing, there are also some candidate leads. And the more detailed and intricate conversations you have with all of these candidates, the more you will get to understand your niche. You don't want to come across as somebody who's just purely selling recruitment services. So like, even if you speak to a candidate, you don't have to say to them, hey, are you looking for a job? Like, don't even have that conversation. You just talk to them about what they do day to day, what they like, what they don't like. You just talk to them about all of these things and they will tell you themselves. At the end of the day, they can see you're a recruiter from your LinkedIn profile. And if they can see that, then why are they taking the time out to have a conversation with you? Only because they believe that either you can help them right now or one day you can. Where a lot of recruiters take a direct approach to say, hey, this is what we're recruiting for, here's a vacancy, so and so. You don't need to do that because they know exactly why you're connecting. And the more you spell it out, the more frustrating it becomes, because it's like, hey, I'm not looking for a job. I just thought I'd connect with you. And then you pitch them an opportunity and then they block you. You have to over deliver, because your first few clients are your most important clients. When I mean over deliver, I don't just mean get the placement done. What I mean is over communicate and give them incredible results, because the goal here is not just the fee. The goal here is for the client and for the candidate to believe that you have their best interests at heart and you are working all the time to make sure that their interests are being fulfilled. Because once the placement is done, or you sell them a different service, what you end up with is satisfied customers, which is the ultimate goal for every business. This is where you get testimonials, LinkedIn recommendations, all of those things start coming through. Meaning, if you ever decide to go through my LinkedIn profile and my team's, like many of us has 50, even 100 plus LinkedIn recommendations, that's not every single placement that we've ever done. That's a portion of the people who are happy to work with us and they said, okay, cool, we'll write this out for you. But what about all the people that either didn't get time to, or they were too busy, or they just didn't want to write a LinkedIn recommendation? There's a whole host more. And all of those things, i.e. the testimonials, the satisfied customers, this is what builds the foundation in your business. Because once you have a few happy clients and you start to see some real results, that's when the game changes. Because one day you're able to forecast and predict a baseline for what you're going to deliver in terms of regular and reoccurring recruitment fees. Now all of a sudden, You have a story to tell and you can present it to your next clients. What I've spoken about there is to get your first placement or even your first 30 or even 50K month. But now to get to 100, you can't keep doing everything manually. You need to build the machine. Before we get into building that machine, I know that there's a lot of guesswork and elements that come in between. Meaning, how do you have a conversation with the client? How do you have conversations with your candidates? If you want an entire stack of templates and resources that I've put together completely for free, just go to mohammedadris.com and you'll find all of the resources there. If you find them valuable and you feel like being part of people, being part of a community where there's other people doing the same thing as you and some more resources in terms of video format, then I'll leave a link below to the school group where I host all of this. Getting to 100K a month. I want to say this, that getting to 100K a month depends on your niche and the target market that you've chosen. If your placement fees are 50 or even 60K, then you need 2 placements. You probably don't need to build a machine just yet, but the machine allows your business to become scalable. I'm just taking an average number, assuming that your fees are around about 10K. In which case doing 2, 3, 4, even 5 placements is a solid run and makes you a very, very good recruiter, with high performers doing more than that. But ultimately, to get to a place where you can make 10, 20, even 30 placements in a month, now you need a machine. And that's what's going to take you well over the 100K mark. And it happens in a few steps. Step 1 is, how did you come to know that the client is hiring? I'll give you a few examples. They could send you an email. You could speak to a candidate and they tell you a client is hiring. You might see a vacancy advertised. You might hear that they've won a really big project. And that means that you should reach out to them before they actually advertise a job. You're really close friends with the HR manager and the HR manager said, hey, we're going to start hiring pretty soon. Like, there's a load of ways that you can do it. You have to be present in all of those places. And once you track all of those things, you begin to realize that actually the sequence of events that follows after that to get to a place where the vacancy is secured or even the interview is secured or the service is sold, then there's a chain of events that took place. Was it a few emails? Was it a few phone calls? Was it a few LinkedIn messages? Was it in-mails? Like, what was the sequence of events that took place? That is what you're automating in a client acquisition system. Not the human elements, just the bits that literally anybody could do. Meaning that if you have a very similar message that you send introducing yourself and your company, that email can be automated. Even if you reverse the recruiting process and you're taking a candidate first approach, you're probably using the same template of email to introduce and sell your candidate, and you're applying it to so many different companies. And if you're sitting there typing it manually, the whole thing can be automated, including the follow-up emails as well. If you ever receive a message either on LinkedIn or email and you can tell it's templated, you're probably not going to accept because it just looks like it has no effort whatsoever. So there are appropriate places and times to use AI and automation. There's also inappropriate places and times. So now you've got your client acquisition out the way. The next thing is the same thing for candidates. Like, how do you find your candidates? Where do the leads come from? How do you convert them? What's your process for winning the highest level of trust? At what moment do you say no to working with a candidate? All of these things have to be mapped out, literally like a journey map. And this is usually the moment where you begin to realize some constraints in your business. Like, okay, your client acquisition is automated, your candidate acquisition is automated or delegated. Like, you could use employees in this process as well. The point here is, where is the constraint? Like, do you need more clients or do you need more candidates? You're going to end up in this position where you need either more clients or more candidates. So now your clients are coming in good flow, your candidates are coming in good flow. You can turn which engine you're going to turn up and turn down. And the next thing is hiring your first team member. This is what I would do, but I also believe this is a mistake that some recruiters make as well. Because when you go to make your first hire, the natural thing is, how do I get to make another hire who's going to help us make more money? And the default is, we need to hire recruiters. And the example that I gave earlier, if you're hiring in that position and you don't have any other team members, then you're probably going to be the worst manager to possibly work for, meaning that that recruiter is very likely to leave. When that recruiter is very likely to leave, then you just end up burning money, meaning you've got to pay for a salary, software, licensing, CRM, all of that stuff comes into it. What you've gained is nothing, just more headache, more stress, more time. And you've tried to micromanage somebody to the point that they resign. And in some cases, I've heard stories of where people don't even bother resigning. They just walk out because it just becomes too much. What do I believe is the best first hire to make? Well, it's actually an assistant. It could be one in person. It could be a virtual assistant. It could be anywhere in the world. But the reason why you make this hire is because you need to get out of all of the little errand things that you do that keep your business ticking along, that need to happen, but they're not urgent and pressing right now, meaning your business wouldn't close down, but they just need to happen, including chasing invoices, formatting CVs, following up on replies, templating out replies, all of this stuff. Like, anybody else can send out those messages that you're sending out on LinkedIn. Because hiring that first assistant is the first step in building the machine that allows your business to operate without you. And that first hire is also the person that's going to help you build your company culture, because they're not targeted on revenue. They're not targeted on KPIs. They're just targeted on helping you take stuff off your plate that you shouldn't really be doing because it doesn't directly contribute towards growing the business. Because if you don't make that first hire, then all you do is you hire a recruiter who you're going to end up micromanaging, and the recruiter has no real structure and no real resource or support, and the likelihood of them failing, unless they're a very experienced recruiter, which obviously comes at a higher salary, they just end up getting frustrated and leaving. And one of the things that might help is that you don't want to think like you're building a team of recruiters. You're building a team full stop. What that means is that a team comes with culture. It comes with practical elements. It comes with how people gel and work well together. It comes with the routine of cadence of meetings and conversations internally with the team. All of these things come together and form a company culture. And that is it. You've now made candidate acquisition easier and simpler. You've removed yourself from all of the admin day-to-day work. And that allows you to think more clearly, allowing you to hire somebody and make more conscious decisions. Because when you hire that recruiter with the support of automations, AI, the systems, the VAs, and you have a structure that they can come into, guess what? They do really well. And then you want to do it again. And you keep going. Before you know it, you've gone way past 100K a month. Now that we're past that point and looking to grow to the next phase of growth in our business, looking back, there's a few things that I probably would have done a little bit more differently. And effectively, what I'm going to share with you here is some of the regrets that I had along the journey, like really conscious decisions that I think I should have made a little bit quicker and sooner. And the first is that I should have hired a VA sooner. I should have said no to bad clients who I knew were going to be a pain in the ass to work with. I should have invested in AI and automation sooner. I wish I was more ruthless with my time and my boundaries sooner and applied those rules in sooner. I wish I wasn't so forgiving because I gave too many chances to people who didn't deserve those chances. I wish I said no to late paying clients. I wish I didn't work late at certain moments in time because it's a cycle that keeps repeating. I actually wish that I sought help from people who were ahead of me. I also wish I had ChatGPT, and I wish somebody had made literally this video that I'm making today. There's also things that I'm glad I never changed, and I'd do exactly the same again. I'd still niche down, go ultra niche on day one. I'd still focus on over delivering for a handful of clients first. I'd still build the business around the systems in the business rather than the actual people. I'd still find a really difficult niche to go into rather than the most obvious one that everybody can jump into and understand within a few seconds. And overall, generally, I'm actually quite happy with some of the journey that we've had. With one more thing that I regret not saving up 6 or 7 months worth of running costs before I started my business. I only had 2 months. Basically, if I didn't make a placement in my first 2 months, then I would have had to close the business down. Thankfully, I made one in my first week, but that only bought me time because it took me another few months before I made the second one. And I think the ultimate thing here is to be prepared, but also committed and patient all at the same time. Because if you don't have 6, 7, even 12 months of runway, then the closer you get to the end of the runway, the more impatient you become. And the more impatient you are, your emotions begin to show, your candidates can feel it, your clients can feel it, and it doesn't give off a good impression. And when that happens, the likelihood of you closing those deals or those contracts, they just begin to dwindle away very slowly. The overall theme here is you don't have to be perfect to start. You just have to start. And as long as you've got the frameworks in place that I've described here, you've already got enough information to start making a move. If that story resonates with you, or you've watched it and you feel like, okay, there's some really fine detailed insight which I might be able to provide you, then I'll invite you to book in a call with me or someone in my team to see if it makes sense for us to work together. And then on that call, we'll give you as much information up front. We'll make a personalized plan and we'll see if we're actually a good fit. And if it's not the right time, you're not quite ready yet, completely fine. Don't need to book in the call. I'll direct you in 2 places. One, there's a school group in the description below, which you can join. And there's other people who are basically in the earlier stages of starting their recruitment business. There's a few more resources in there, a few more links to videos, a few more instructions, and over 1,000 people who already decided that they're going to take the first step. And if you're missing the gap in terms of how you're actually going to get your clients, then just go and watch this video because that talks you through exactly how we win our clients today and is working right now.